I don't trust the cloud. All right, we are officially recording. I think people maybe can see I have it on gallery view, not speaker view. Pick how you would like to witness this conversation. But just so everyone who is here listening knows that you are not being recorded. Your blank screen is not being recorded. It just has the 4 folks participating on said panel. So with that, I'm looking at notes on the other monitor, just so y'all know. And this is the first pleasure panel of Masturbation Month of May. Yay. Had some fun with that afternoon. And we are talking about something very close to my heart, we'll say. And I think pretty special to all the people who are here joining us for the conversation. And that is self-pleasure post-purity culture. And that was more just like a catchy title with some really good consonants to it. Like, truthfully, I would say, at least for myself, it's an ongoing journey to deconstruct that narrative and re-articulate what self-pleasure looks like, separate from, or as I move through what's been internalized from purity culture in my life and society, etc. So we're just going to dive into whatever comes up for us. But first off, I did want to share, I went into the records for this specific event to kind of get some guidance on what questions to ask, but also just to kind of sit with a message of really kind of the intent behind this panel. I knew I wanted to do it, but I'm kind of one of those people where I'm a what do you call it? A mental projector. I wait for the invitation. The invitation comes, and typically I just say yes and I go with the flow. I'm not one for a lot of research. I question things a healthy amount, but typically, and this is kind of, Jordana, you'll probably just have a chuckle at this. Like, typically when I know something's right, I know for certain it is right, and I know to move forward with it. There, maybe I should just trust myself more often. Eh? Yeah, there we go. And so with that, I went into the records of this specific event in the community just to get a message. General backstory on the records. I don't want to go into too much detail, but if you're in Soulscape, you've seen a bit about it. If you've seen the YouTube, you've seen a bit about it. And really the records, the Akashic records, are like this giant, I'll say beautiful, because to me it is, beautiful library. And within this library, there's a book for every soul that has existed. And when I access, for example, my Akashic records, I'm accessing the book for my soul, and I'm gaining information and access to information from all of the lives my soul has lived. And that can be past, present, future, and concurrent. And so similarly, we can gain access to the records of non-human animals. And we can also gain access to the records of things like a home, always with consent. There's ways to gain consent. And also for things like an event has its own records. And just like Soulscape, if you see every month, I post things that I've channeled from the records of the community. And so now I will read you, probably with some stuttering, because I'm not the best at reading out loud, what came through when I went into the records last night, to just kind of like, hopefully help us all exhale a little more and settle into the conversation that is to come. Ayo. Okay. So, pleasure. This notion of pleasure is so separate from you. It is so other, but it should not be. Ideally, it should be at the essence, the driving force of every soul incarnate. But then why do we lose sight? Why do we, our souls, slip into the background and succumb to fear? Why are we drowning in a pool where we are to swim? Because we have been told no. We have been told you are wrong. Not even necessarily for a choice you have made, but for who you are, for the way you exist. And this is not okay. This is not the way. This is not the way things were meant to be. This is what ego has done. It has tainted the intent, the purity of the soul. Purity and pleasure are meant to coexist, but instead, purity has drowned out the voice of the divine. It has drowned out the song of the soul, the tune of joy. It has been tainted, and with that, it has taken from this incarnated experience an important part of its essence, your essence. And now is the time to claim it back. Whew. I don't know. I got like major chills while reading that, and I probably should have worn a bra. So anyway, that's going on YouTube.
No, it's good. I felt like a weight just come from here all the way down, like through my solar plexus. I'm like, okay, I'm ready. Let's do this.
I love it. How's everyone else feeling? Quick check-in.
Yeah, I feel so excited to dive in with this topic. And yeah, that definitely made me feel a lot more relaxed and open and ready.
Beautiful. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Well, with that, oh yeah, I feel like, okay, I'm done. Work's over. No.
Bye now.
You're right. That's it, folks. That's all. Yeah. It's not like a Bugs Bunny thing. Anyway, yeah, we'll do some brief introductions. I guess people might know me. They might really not. My name's Natalie. Channel for Soulscape community. I don't want to say creator because we're all in that space to co-create whatever it's meant to be at any given moment. And that's kind of the beauty of it. I am located just shy of White Rock, British Columbia in Canada. That's on the West Coast and of North America. I should really specify that. What purity culture means for me, I know we'll get into the upbringing that I had, but I think the first thing truly that comes to mind when I think purity culture is exactly what came through when channeling, was that it means that I, as my whole being, am not allowed to exist while having access to the community that really has dictated the rules to me for my entire life. And so for a lot of the time, it has meant isolation from others, but I think also truly from myself, like the self that channeling talked about, my soul, my essence. Yeah, I think I'll leave it there. Who wants to hop in next? I can call on you. I can play teacher.
I'll be glad to go next, Natalie.
Go for it.
Hey, yeah, so yeah, I don't want you to call on me. My name is Beaux, and I am in Tulsa, Oklahoma right now. Rainy Tulsa. It's a lovely day, and my pronouns are he, him. I'm excited to talk about purity culture and what it means and how it's affected my life and where it's brought me. When I think about what purity culture means to me, what I think about the lessons that I was taught, and like you, the upbringing is such an important part of this discussion, was that by participating in pleasure, whether that's with yourself, with other people, with your own thoughts, anything that is pleasurable, you can in fact ruin yourself, ruin a pure version of yourself, that it's irredeemable. I felt like purity culture, when I think of it in that way, is a lack of opportunity to find rebirth, to find new meaning and new structure. And that in one moment, you sort of like ruin something that is pure. And so that is something that obviously has long lasting and devastating impacts. And I love what the records were saying. I have been struggling with, instead of claiming purity back, like the records were saying, instead, I've often thought of it as breaking the cycle for another generation. And so I think even this conversation may be really impactful in trying to find a way to like think of claiming it back for myself right now, because that's what's important. And so there we go.
Beautiful. Thank you. Who wants to go next?
I will.
Oh,
You go, babe. You go, babe.
we rock, paper, scissors.
No, you go, honey.
Well, I'm from Tulsa too, so I was like, I'll just like, hey, Beau, we need to hang out. Okay. So my name is Jessica Branston. I'm a licensed professional counselor. So I got the little LPC after my name. And from Tulsa, I think I said that twice because I'm kind of nervous. And what purity culture means to me, I mean, it was very formative for me. I've joked that like I was like the poster child for the purity culture. And I didn't understand fully how devastating the impact was until, I don't know if you've ever heard like rubber band trauma, like where you're in a traumatic environment and it's stretching and you're like, I'm fine, it's fine, I'm fine, it's fine. And then it snapped back, and it was part of a very destructive, painful part of my life a few years ago. Because it impacted my marriage, it impacted the way that I interact with my body, how I see the world, how I move in the world. I didn't realize how much shame that I moved through the world in, because I really took all of the different teachings of purity culture to heart. And I also come from a background that, gave me complex PTSD. So I've been unraveling, unwinding all of the different facets of that. And then as a therapist, I have a lot of clients especially because I'm in Tulsa, that are coming to me. And a lot of what I do is work with people on religious shame, spiritual shame, and sexual shame. And I can see the destructiveness of it. So it was like a guideline for me. And then I didn't realize where it was leading me until it was too late. So that's a little bit, I mean, we'll get into it more, but.
Beautiful. Thank you. And Jordana, my love.
I feel so excited to be in the presence of all of you babes, especially just like hearing, like a little bit about your journeys with purity culture. But my name is Jordana. I am from Melbourne. I live in Melbourne. Well, I'm kind of staying in Melbourne, but I live in Byron Bay, in Australia. And I'm a little bit nervous too, hence that little where am I? But I am a somatic sex coach, and I mainly work with queer babes so that they can experience deep safety living outside of heteronormativity. And my experience with purity culture has been so damn intense, and I honestly felt like most of my childhood, I was literally going to go to hell, and then had that mentality of like, oh, well, I'm already such a bad girl and I'm already going to hell. I may as well just like do anything because there's really no going back. And I felt like such a shit person for a really long time. And then like experiencing, my gayness and my queerness and like having such deep sexual numbness and like not understanding why pleasure wasn't pleasurable to me, and then recognizing later after like a lot of study and like understanding like exactly what purity culture was and how the internalization of that manifests within my sex life. It's been such a deep unraveling process that I'm still going through, that I still notice my own like homophobic tendencies or like my own kind of like deep systemic internalization of this. And yeah, I'm really excited to have this discussion today and create like deeper awareness about this, because I think that even people that weren't, I guess, like directly like affected by purity culture, like it's such a big neon sign in every part of like day-to-day life that like, whether or not you think that you're actually like a part of it, like that kind of deep systemic sense of purity is so harmful to like our deep capacity to receive pleasure. But yeah, thanks.
Beautiful. Thank you. That otherness, I'm segueing for a quick moment because can I do that? I don't know. But I can't. All right. We're just gonna, I'm a rebel. What can I say? Actually, I was just talking to a friend about that this morning because I drove to the park and I got home. I was on my way home and I was like, I want to go buy a plant. So I was like reaching into my bag to like find my wallet. There was no wallet. And I was like, that means there's no license in this car. And I just got my full license like 2 weeks ago. I was like, I am more rebellious than we thought. And like, that is a scary thought to have. Anyway, the otherness like that, Jordana, it resonated so much, and I feel like I need to say something because it does feed into like the next conversation. But like my first crush was on a girl then, because woman now, whatever. And I was in Catholic school for like years. I always feel weird saying this, like not a girl, but anyway. And I experienced something really similar. It was like there's this set of rules, and I think this goes into like the first question I'd written down was like, how old were you when you first received any form of sexual education, and what did that look like? And so for me, that was closely intertwined with church upbringing. And church upbringing, for me, purity culture is not always to do with church, but for me, it was closely related. church and state. There's like this set of rules, and if you follow those set of rules, like it was like, you go to heaven, you're a good person, you have community, we accept you, we love you because you fit this standard, this like you fit in this box. And as soon as I started to have thoughts, like was mentioned, and feelings and connections outside that box, I was like, well, that's no longer a safe place for me. But the thing was, I was also taught that anything outside of that box, like the message shared, was wrong. And I wasn't given a place where I could explore who I was. So I pushed into other, but not for sake of finding myself. It was like because I felt like I had no other option. There was no alternative. And so I pushed into that wrongness. But that's the thing, is like, I wasn't articulating a sense of self. I wasn't articulating any sort of like inspired divine journey. It was literally me just like digging myself into this hole of what I thought was defined as like disgusting and wrong, because it's the only place I knew how to fit, because everything was so fucking juxtaposed that like there wasn't space for me to be in the middle and like be like Jordana shared with us last week, like to be fluid and have that be fucking beautiful. Like that didn't exist there. That wasn't a choice. And so talking about sex education specifically, because I don't want to ramble at you for like 3 hours, that came for me in elementary school is when it started. And I think it was around grade 5 or 6. Because I can like picture myself sitting in the classroom, and there was a book called Love and Life. And basically the message of this book was that I, young female person, would find a man who loved me, and then we would have sex to create children.
Mm-hmm.
And that was that. It wasn't ever about fun. It wasn't about the type of connection. Like, and at the time I wasn't aware of this, but thinking back on it now, I was like, that gave a message that like my body wasn't for me. What my body's capable of wasn't for me.
Right.
And I say capable of having like people know. I fully got my tubes removed in December because like I know my body's not meant to have children, and actually going through that eliminated a big amount of like disconnect from my womb, because I think it felt unsupportive of the path I meant to lead, and now it feels like it's mine again, and it's like fuck yes. But like none of that was for myself, and with that, nowhere in there was pleasure for myself or for a partner, like whatsoever. And I also remember, because I think for me this is very closely tied, similarly when it reminds me of like that Friends episode, like what is it, like Act 1, my first period. So when I got my first period, I was given a book. Similar. There was no conversation. It was like a book about what your body is doing, and then on you go. And so what that taught me was, this isn't worthy of being talked about. This isn't something I should feel safe exploring or trying to understand. This is something I need to hide. It's something I should be ashamed of, really. And like, I truthfully still carry that now. I'm 29 for reference. I don't know when my first period was. I was probably like 13. But like it is still there. So I think that's in a nutshell what that experience was for me. Maybe we'll just like keep our little like clockwise order going so we can jump down to Beaux next.
So the question is, when did I first have some sexual education?
And what did that look like? Yeah,
what did it look like? So we talked a little bit about, our experiences. I'm actually a pastor's child, dirty, rotten church kid of myself. And in Tulsa, which is, some people would call it the buckle of the Bible Belt of America, where, I grew up, very like eager to learn about God and divinity and experience that in like its actuality, and it's really important to me. And so, like we've all talked about how nervous we are, and I still am, because I still feel shame in talking about sexual education, like in any type of public forum. And it's very tough to undo, but that's why we do things that are uncomfortable, because we want to grow past it and move on. And my experience with sexual education was probably grade 5 fifth grade is what we call it in America. And my dad told me that Mary was a virgin when she had Christ. And that means that she didn't have sex. And so she was still pure when she birthed Christ. And I was like, okay, like that's really some good information there. That like, one of the last like truly like times that I was really punished by my parents, like in a really, way that was incredibly inappropriate, was the first time they heard me like say the word masturbation. Like, and it was in 7th grade. And I honestly did not know what I was talking about. I had 2 friends over for my birthday party. And we were talking about it, and it made my dad very, very upset. And he's like, you've, embarrassed your mom and the family for even talking about this with your 7th grade friends. And I was like, I guess. And so like up until, high school biology, really, there was not really, I did not have an idea. Maybe even 17 before I kind of understood like most of the things that people need to know about sex from an early age. And so that was kind of my experience. It was centered around the idea that it's shameful and that to be pure, you need to avoid pleasure at all costs.
Yeah.
I had a chuckle, sorry, because I played Mary in the school play. And so when you mentioned that, I was like, yep, I was put in the dress. I had to march to the front of the church. Like it was a whole thing. And there was a whole scandal about the person who played Christ in that play, but that's a story for another day anyway.
Yeah. And Mary, she was like, her virginity was so important to the like Christ divinity. And I think it's just interesting how like tied it was to like this idea of being pure. And like my dad even having the conversation with me about like what sex came down to Mary was pure because she hadn't had it. And that was important. That's the whole thing. This is bizarre to me now, but
I love the idea with the story of Mary too. I think I might have gotten this from the movie Saved, but it's such a more interesting and complex story. If maybe Mary just got knocked up and then was like, it was God. And then Joseph was like, it was God. And even if it wasn't, I also kind of feel like it just gives a layer, like, what if it wasn't Joseph's, but he understood her context and what would have happened to her had it come out that she'd gotten pregnant out of wedlock, because people are messy. I mean, I'm a therapist. I'm here for it. Like, I just like that idea of like, I mean, I definitely do not identify as a Christian. So I like the idea that maybe she wasn't a virgin.
She was just messy as fuck.
Like, she was horny because that's who you are. Like,
yeah.
I mean, facts.
I feel you, Beaux. And I will say I've been connecting with different people and therapists in Tulsa where we're talking about unbuckling the buckle of the Bible belt. So that's happening.
That's nice.
But I had that same reaction reading these questions this morning, just this like, I can't do this. Like, I can't do this, is going to go on the internet forever. Like, I can't. And yet I feel like it's so important to talk about it and to tell our stories. And I went to Christian schools. So my actual sexual education was 0. I do remember asking a babysitter what a condom was, and then having every conversation with my mom. I think it was with my mom, and it was very uncomfortable. I think she demonstrated the condom on the banana, and I was like, I don't want to be here. I know too, she has her own relationship with pleasure and sex, and it was not something that came natural. And as a therapist, I know the importance of being able to be grounded and to have your shame where it like maybe worked out in therapy, but also just for you to not have that shown to your children so that they know they can come and talk to you about it and that it's normal and it's natural. And there was never a point from any of the grownups in my life where this was normal, this was natural, except for talking about marriage. So I remember my mom kind of trying to have a talk with me right before I was about to get married. My dad did too, and they were very problematic. And I had sex for the first time. So I did the opposite. I was like, I've got this straight and narrow. I have self-control. I'm gonna nail this, but I'm by not nailing anything. And I just like I found journals. I just moved this summer. I found journals of me like pleading with God to take away crushes that I had on people, because I knew I was only supposed to be in love with Jesus, and I was only supposed to be spiritual and love God. And I was like, but I just want to have fun. And I just love this person, please. Or like, I like this person so much, take these feelings away. And so going into marriage, I was like ready. I was like, let's do this sex, let's do the things. And my honeymoon the first half was a nightmare, because no one had sat down with me to be like, hey, when you have sex, you're going to need to let your vagina heal for a couple days. So we just kept trying to go to town like the rabbits we were supposed to be now that we were magically married. And he would fall asleep and I'd be up late Googling like what is happening, like why does it hurt to have sex? I was like, I did all the right things. God is punishing. Like, what did I do wrong? And I finally had a sibling who identifies as queer and trans, but at the time they identified as lesbian. When we were going back, I was talking to them and they're like, yeah, you got to take a break. Like, you got to let it heal. And nobody else had those conversations with me. And my sexual life with my ex-husband I didn't know until now, I was in freeze trauma responses because I was doing the thing that I had conditioned myself not to do. And so we would sometimes have sparks of chemistry, but there was no one around to kind of like walk me through what pleasure looked like and how to get to know my body. And like, I didn't learn about like my own autonomy until I started having babies, like, and tracking my cycles. And you have a lot of hands up your vagina when you're, actually pregnant. Like, I have a lot of less shame because just everyone's seen everything at this point. But I like my formal sexual education came after my divorce, where I was like, what? Okay, the internet and what ethical porn, like what can I do to figure this out and to say yes to this part of me? Because my body never belonged to me either. It belonged to my parents and God and Jesus, then it belonged to my husband. And it was the first time ever that finally it was like, oh, this is mine. What's happening here? Who is this person? What am I allowed to feel? What am I allowed to have? And I have a lot of grief just for how long it took me to get there. And also like a lot of love for myself, kind of navigating all that. And I know that I'm not alone in that kind of stuff either.
No, you're not.
Yeah, no, I know. Like, there's 4 people for sure.
Oh my God. I so hear you, Jessica, in all of this. Like, not feeling like your body is your own and having that kind of deep grief because, like everybody else has had come before your own relationship with pleasure and like, pleasing Jesus and pleasing like your husband and pleasing other people like outside of yourself. I've definitely fucking been there, and I really resonate with both of your stories so much. And oh my God, fuck yes to unbuckling that like deep Bible felt. Yeah, fuck. So also same with you, Jessica. I went to a Christian school when I was in primary school. But my sexual education was very different to both of yours. I was extremely curious. Like I think I asked my dad what sex was when I was 5, and he gave me the response of, that's for adults. And I was like, so weird. I'm like, I hear people fucking saying this word all the time, and I don't know why I'm not supposed to know about it. And like, even though like I went to Sunday school like every Sunday morning and every Sunday night, and I'd heard like a little bit about, sex was like a sacred act that you did like after marriage, but I just wanted to know like the ins and outs of like what actually is this fucking sacred act that I'm not supposed to know anything about. So I went to my older sister, and she fully was like, okay, like gave me the whole like, this is what you do. And I was like, wow, that's fucking psycho. That kind of stuff.
If kids developmentally appropriate answers, they're like, cool, I don't want to know anything else for a while. Like, just tell them the truth. Like, you're 5 is normal to be like, what is sex? Like,
Yeah. So naturally, I went to school the next day in like grade 2 and was like, guys, can you fucking believe that our parents are doing this? It's straight psycho. And obviously, like at the time, the principal got called, my parents got called in, my sister got in heaps of trouble, and I actually got taken out of the school. So I had this big thing of like, holy fuck, you are not supposed to talk about this, or like, this is a very bad thing, like very, very bad thing. And then I just kind of had this, I guess, experience way over my body that I was a bad person. And then after that, I would get like visualizations of like the devil like coming to get me. And I was always saying this to my parents. Like I was like, I think like, you know, like Satan is like after me and I'm not safe. And like I had like a lot of those kind of like experiences. And I remember the first time I touched myself, I was like, I'm definitely dead. Like God is watching me all of the time. I'm 100% going to hell. And I remember the direct decision I made. I was like, my parents are not murderers. So while I live on this earth, I'm safe. But after that, I'm going to burn in hell. And I'm already at that stage. So I may as well have sex, touch myself, do drugs, like do whatever. And I had this like deep mentality of like, I'm already fucked. I'm so fucked that like, I'm just going to like continue on that road of like complete fuckedness. And I first had sex when I was 14 because I didn't know how to give a blowjob. And I was like, oh, well, you may as well just fuck me instead because I don't know how to do any of these other things that you're asking me to do. And after that, I just like researched and became this like person that was like, okay, I'm not like, I don't want to not be educated in this thing. And at school, like I did notice like the schooling education was like very much around like, you have sex to have babies. And I was that person in class that was like, what about pleasure? And always getting taken out of class and always getting like monitored and all of this kind of stuff. Like I started refusing to go to church and my parents were like, we're very disappointed in you. I will say now though, that both my parents are so obsessed with the work that I do. They both still go to church, but they're so like, they love that I'm queer. They love that I'm a sex coach. They're like very open to like understanding like, you know, their own pleasure in like a different way and all of that kind of stuff. And that's been like something that's been really amazing. But I actually got off after getting taken out of school, I got homeschooled and I felt like really isolated. And then going to high school after being homeschooled for like 6 years, I just felt like always the odd one out and quite like odd and very weird at school. And this whole thing of not being allowed to have sex and sex being such a shameful act actually made me want to do it like a lot more. And then like I had sex to validate my body and to validate my existence, and you know, got slut shamed a lot in high school, and actually like got called like Jordana a lot, which is like this just like crazy like thing that happened to me when I was growing up. But yeah, the non-education from my parents really like paved the pathway that I have today, and like how like I just want I guess like deep safety around like our sexual education, but also like eradicating my own shame. Like I'm still on that journey. Like I still have moments where I'm like, oh my God, like this is dirty. And I'm like, wow, like I can't believe after all of these years and all of this like unraveling that like the sexual shame is still so alive. And my own like, you know, like homophobic like thoughts and like systemic things that have just been like so fucking deeply ingrained through lack of education. But yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's all just like
Snaps for that.
yep. I love this virtual room that we have right now. And I'm just like, a side note, because I do a lot of those. It's like my old professor when I was in this like minds and machines course. I studied like AI theory in university. And he would always like stand to the side of the podium when he was doing like a footnote that you wouldn't really need for the exam. But the thing is, he was always to the fucking side of the podium. So I was like, what am I supposed to study? And like with me, everything is like an aside. You reminded me of like so many things. And one, because I think some of you have touched on like your relationship with your parents and this. And like, I remember finding condoms in like the back of my parents' bed.
I found
Yeah.
condoms.
I was repulsed. Like I was so mad at them. Because it was disgusting.
Yeah, of course.
I was like,
So natural.
How dare you?
I thought it was
What
disgusting.
the fuck are you doing?
Well, I was like, because I was taught that it was wrong. I was taught you're supposed to do this to have a kid. You already got 2. What are you doing? Like, no one said this was supposed to be fun. But then it's so funny. I can't remember if I told you this the other day, Jordana, if I said it to someone else, and this is now going the internet. So like, fuck me sideways. I don't even know. But anyway, please no. So I was like, I had this weird, because we're talking about that, like, and it's so juxtaposed. There's like this dichotomy, and we live with this dichotomy, and like, where do we fit? Because it's like, it's so separate. It's so separate. But there was me, 13 years old, 12 years old, probably end of because I did Catholic school from grade 5 to 7, and then 8 and 9. The only worthwhile thing I kept was the skirt. I'll show y'all that later. But I remember, I mean, I'm serious, but like,
Please.
I'll send the pictures. It's fine. There was like the me that had to follow all the rules, but then there was also the me. And I literally remember having this thought when I was 12 years old, where I was like, I should just be a prostitute, because like you make money for having fun. Like, I mean, I was 12. I didn't understand all of the problematic things with that statement, but like, what? Like, where was that coming from? And then it's like, I don't know, sitting with it now, the first thing that comes up is like, there was some deep rooted desire and something in me that knew that sex could be pleasurable and that it's meant to be, whether it's with myself or with another person or other people. But I just didn't know what that could healthfully look like, because I was taught that all pleasure was unhealthy and wasn't for me. Right. And so, yeah, when my parents were potentially having sex, I was like, ew, that's gross. That being said, my parents barely touched each other. So the thought of anything more, like I never saw physical contact in my household. So the thought of more was like quite repulsive and like didn't make sense in the situation I grew up in. But with that, now I have questions like in an order, but I think we're kind of segueing already to this, like, what did self-pleasure initially look like for you? So I feel like I'm going to just like keep going with that theme, and you can add on to whatever hasn't yet come up. And I'm sharing a whole lot in front of some people right now. Good gravy. It's a good thing I didn't wear red, because like I need to offset the color of my skin in this oh, good Lord. So I'm like,
we're all in this together right now. It's
I'm a rosy.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was like, what the fuck am I saying?
And I'm terrified, but it's okay. We're all okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about me and me.
I mean, I had some of that earlier. It was fantastic. Did it used to be? No. Enter the next topic. So, ayo, my first sexual experience was with the same person I talked about. So, in adult language, with a woman. I was 15. So, in the like, I guess, scientific sense of the term, I lost my virginity to a woman. Here's the thing, though. I don't know, people correct me on that. I was engaging with someone else with the same anatomy as me in this particular instance before I had ever engaged with myself. And so, and this is like super, it shouldn't be embarrassing, but this is where there is still like, I didn't know what to do when it came to reciprocating.
Of course
And
you did.
they
Very
were
normal.
like dumbfounded at that. I don't know if that's a good word to use. I don't know the other word to use. And I communicated it, which like that was good for me. I was like, I haven't done this, so I don't know what to do. But they were like, what do you mean you haven't done this? I was like, well, why would I? Like it just hadn't been a thought. And I think at that point, like I had probably touched myself, but like truthfully in the way that I sometimes do now, like just enough so I don't have to like get up to pee again before bed and then I can go to sleep. Like it's not like preventative measure. It's like, come on, I really don't want to move. I'm super comfy. Okay, cool. So oh, hi, Christoph. He normally joins me. That's weird too. But anyway, but that was it. Like I didn't know because I hadn't touched myself. But that was when I was 15. It took me until I was 1 year sober. So about 22, 23 years old. I just passed 8 years. To actually intentionally, go on, you can jump. Engage in any sort of self-exploration or self-pleasure. And that's when I like bought my first vibrator. And like it's interesting, I think, if we talk about like what did the relationship look like, because for me it was very much just like it did not exist and then it did, and it's transitioned still quite a bit in the last like that's 7 years. Oh, all the cats are coming to play now.
Oh,
Oh my god, I love it. Here, buddy, come meet a
My
friend.
emotional support animal, and he's like, hey baby, you need some emotional support. I'm like, I do. Yes.
Yes.
You know,
When we talk about pussies, our pussies have
my little man. Okay. So like, oh, but seriously, I'll like declothe to like lay on my bed and do some self-pleasure. And I like literally just lay down and he like jumps up and falls asleep on my chest. So I was like, all right, so we're just cuddling now. This is not what I signed up for. But yeah, it kind of just wasn't until I started experiencing things. But I literally started with a book to learn how to like use said vibrator because I had no idea. And that's where it's, I guess, without saying where the self-pleasure part is at now, but where I think right now I still get like hangups. Like the biggest part that I'm trying to figure out is how to bridge the gap from experiencing it with self, which I can do like really well now, to like experiencing it with another person. That is hard. And I haven't truthfully fully dug into what that is. I don't know. There's probably a couple different things, like physical touch in general. I'm like, ugh, you know, the ASD thing has some part to play in that. Like, I don't understand cues. It's weird. It's always jarring, blah, blah, blah. But I think where I'm at now is like, how do I articulate that outwards? But like, even still, it's like, I'm just thinking it's like you can be really fucking good at something and still carry so much shame around it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think as we're talking about it, that's what I'm noticing is like it should not fucking feel wrong for any of us to be here advocating for our own pleasure. Yet even me who talks about this stuff quite openly online, Jordana, all the time. I mean, I'm assuming, Jess, you probably talk fairly openly. I don't know.
I love talking sex.
Right?
Not on the internet usually, but
mine's all over the internet, but I still have this hang up. Like my mom came over last weekend to watch my cat when I was at a friend's house. And I realized when I was at the house, I was like, I definitely left Kegel balls on the counter in my bathroom.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah,
you did.
And my friend was like, I wouldn't let my mom into my house. And I was like, my mom goes into my house. She knows what she might see. Like that's the point that's at. And I'm really grateful that it's at that point. But there's still like a disconnect between that presentation and like some of the feelings that are behind it, I guess. Anyway, yeah, with that, I will pass to Beaux.
yes. So we're talking about like initially sort of what self-pleasure looked like to, in my experience. I imagine that as a cis man, it's probably really different. And because I was taught that sex is pleasure. Like, it's supposed to be pleasureful, and it's supposed to be something that's awesome. And, you know, like, there was probably like 3 or 4 times as a teenagers that, you know, hey, teenage boys will gather around and we'll just have a man-to-man talk about this. But the thing is that pleasure is a picture of like some type of perfect relationship that so much so it's like Christ, like, and the church and stuff like that.
Yup.
Oh yeah. So it was really important. So like I got this book, and I've got some with me because I have to read some quotes from these before. It's
yeah.
some bullshit. It's
I mean, you said
amazing.
you
I
were doing
reread
research, yeah.
yeah, I'm shocked at some of the things that it said. But one of the books was Every Young Man's Battle. It's probably one of the top. And there was a chapter on masturbation, and this guy, the first paragraph on masturbation said, basically, we're ashamed to write about masturbation, but we have to deal with this because a lot of men do it, right? And then they said, the second paragraph was, can you masturbate and not sin? And they were like, well, I guess, like, if you don't think about a woman. And I'm like, you know, I guess. And, you know, you know, it's like there was a little bit there for me where I was like really tried at a very young age, 16 or 17, to like have masturbating experiences where I would like think about my own body, like try to like pleasure me and remove the thought of like someone else. It's a weird that maybe that there was like some positive there that like I had that experience. But very quickly, like the idea of being attracted to other people is going to like come into your mind, for most like people that, you know, are attracted to other people. And so for me, that was certainly my experience. And then so at some point I like looked at pornography, maybe 20 years old or something like that. And along with that came such shame because I knew that I had lusted and that was really wrong. And I remember that I confessed this sin to my dad, you know, to help, and he wanted to help me. So we went to a Christian counselor who has some accreditations, and he's kind of well known around Tulsa. And yeah, I should put him on blast.
We'll talk later.
Yeah, totally. I should
We
put
have
him
a
on
group
blast.
chat, it's fine.
Yeah, but he told me, he's like, yeah, and he just went into this incredibly like misogynistic rant about how disgusting it is that women are doing these things with their body, and like, and you, when you view that, you are gross for how. And like I was sitting there like 20 years old and like, no. I was like, obviously they're not disgusting, or I wouldn't want to like look at them. I thought I'm the disgusting one here. I was like, I'm gross, like, because I have like attraction to someone who's not my future wife. And so, you know, that's kind of a messed up story about you know, my first experiences with self-pleasure, but it is what it is. And yeah, I think that gets most of it.
I'm not gonna start talking about the patriarchy in the church and women's masturbation. And
You can come on my YouTube again and we can talk about that more.
all right, well,
Yes, can we please?
Yes.
We need a good 5 hours with that.
Jolly, I'm gonna make you feel so much better. Are you ready? Okay. So I remember that my parents took each of us on a trip and we listened to a Focus on the Family, Preparing for Adolescence. I think that's where it came from. It was many years ago and lots of trauma since then, so maybe not. But there was a point they talked about masturbation. They were like, it's normal for people to try to do it, but also don't do it. So I was like, oh, cool, got it. Not doing, like, got it. It was like, won't do it. Good. So at some point, I remember hearing someone talk about masturbation and just talking about how your orgasms are meant to bond you to your spouse. And so if you're just masturbating, you're bonding to nothing. So why would you masturbate and bond to nothing? I was like, oh, okay, that totally makes sense. So I didn't really masturbate or do anything. I was like, challenge accepted until I was like, maybe 27, 28, 29, 30. It might have been 30. And I'm not kidding. And that's when I finally bought my own vibrator, and started to like 30. I'm 34, 30. And like, I didn't really start looking at pornography or anything like that until I was divorced and I was out on my own. And I was like, okay, all right, here we go. And I, as a therapist, the school that I go to, one of the theories that they really love is relational cultural therapy, which is all about, because I'm really going to stay focused on purity culture. A lot of psychology is was pioneered by, white, Western, cisgender men. So it's all about like self-actualizing and ending up just like you, the individual on your own, out, bootstraps are pulled up, you're ready to go. And relational cultural therapy, or like feminist theory would let me slow down. I'm nervous and I'm like, oh my God, I just said I didn't masturbate until I was 30. But feminist theory would say women and people are meant to have and be in relationship. And one of the most important relationships is relation to self first. So a big game. So no experience. The closest I got to self-pleasure was like reading what the sexual content was going to be in a movie on pluggedin.com. And I would get very turned on. My parents had they called it Spectre, and it recorded everything on our computer. So you didn't have any privacy to do that. And like, maybe if I found like a sex scene in a book, but even then, like, it was fast forwarded in movies, like, yeah. I would skip over it in books. And it did take till like my late 20s, early 30s to finally be like, oh, a sex scene in a book? Fuck yeah, let's go. But I have now, it's started to transition into that deep connection with myself, that way to pleasure, care, nurture myself, especially when you hear like all of the benefits that you have to regularly orgasming, and like how much it has helped me to deeply connect to my intuition. And I also find a lot of frustration because it's your sacral chakra and your solar plexus, but definitely your sacral, which is creativity. Mm-hmm. And for me to have shut that down for so long, again, especially being a woman in that womb space, it really, I think, stunted my growth and my expansion for longer. I hesitate to say should, because I'm a therapist, so I'm always like, that's red flag, that's a word. Of course we did. Of course, this was our stories based on our programming. So it affected us longer than we wanted it to, and we internalized it in ways that we don't want to, because ultimately I think humans are bent towards finding inner peace, finding self-love, realizing that we are whole and we are good. I mean, God said he created everything, or she or they created everything and said, it is good. But I definitely had it just took me a while. Now I'm like, I have sex with myself like a rabbit. Like, I was like, yes, like right before bed, like, and then you just go straight to sleep, just in the afterglow of like, man, I love myself. Like, I like partnered sex. I like partnered sex too, but it also like just, and so I've been a quick study since then, but yeah, it took me, I missed out on a lot of orgasms, so I'm trying to make up for it. So
yeah. Oh, I so hear you on that grief of missing orgasms. I'm gonna do a quick wee, but I can't wait to come and share.
Go. You can bask in the afterglow of our conversation.
Not even muting yourself. You just gave me a really good idea for my 30th birthday. Right? Well, I see these posts in the other groups I'm in, and it's like, time for group masturbation, like whatever. And I was like, we should just have some like manifestation masturbation thing at the exact time that I was born on my birthday.
All right. Okay. A little bit of sex magic.
Yeah. Also, like, you said like fucking yourself like a rabbit, and I was like, oh, I got one of those. No.
Yeah.
I also will say, like, I have been in back-to-back long distance relationships, so not a lot of time for in-person connection. Yeah. So I think that kind of, in a sense, pushed me towards some of this stuff. But honestly, a big thing that I'm just jumping around the questions, that was like a big shift for me was through getting sober. It was what led to like me getting that first vibrator and whatever. But literally, so I do 12-step stuff, or have up until now and whatever. And I swear to God, whoever that may be, whatever that may be, on page 69 of this book, they planned this shit. It says our sex powers were God-given.
Yes.
Yes.
I get chills just saying that now. And I was like, fuck yes, they are.
Yes.
And like that phrase. And of course, like there's a lot of, well, the patriarchy, blah, 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 even in this book. And we'll talk about that another day. That doesn't change the fact that that message is beneficial for me. Cause like, yeah, my sex powers are fucking God-given. And like, for me and like the events that we've had in the space all month, right? Like any chance of connecting with self, any chance to be present for an interaction. Like I believe that we, like people are necessary because they create the space in which God manifests. And so it's like when we are present for one another, when we are present for an experience, when I'm present for like the beautiful mixture of greens on the tree outside my window, like God is 100% there in the space between. And that space between is so important. That space in which we engage, like that's where learning happens. That's where exploration happens and curiosity is formed, right? And like, so for me, I'm just like, yeah, I'm just jumping questions, like talking about like my relationship with my body being like divinely guided, like that's what it is. It's like when I show up for myself, I experience God.
Yeah.
I don't need to be afraid of God. And it's not to say that I am like, I'm a fucking goddess. Like, yes, but like that song, Jordana, is like my favorite jam right now, by the way. I dance to it like every day. Right? But like, that's that moment. It's like that pure like peace and bliss and just like everything is. And I think that's like, if I think about like my training in like orgasmic meditation and like one taste, like that's the idea, like everything in that moment. And like, that's God. That thing telling me I was wrong and shaming me and like the fear
That's
that
not
was
God.
down. No.
I mean, I've taken two things from Christianity. God is love and perfect love casts out fear. And that's enough. That's enough. And so all of the ways that God is love, perfect love casts out fear, because all of the ways that I interact with my body, the way that I was taught was all fear. There's something wrong with me. This is not good. I am not good. I was trying to go. And what drives me insane as a fucking therapist is like 5 is normal to be asking questions about sex. 14 is normal to be exploring sex and exploring your sexuality. Like there's so many like women that come out, and men probably too, but I'm a woman, I talk to more women that come out later in life, but it's like, and finding out that they're queer because they didn't get a chance to be like, I wonder, and have the curiosity. Like it was like a childlike wonder was robbed from like an entire generation of people, and this like natural, normal, God-given, developmentally appropriate development. I said development more than once. Was taken. Yep. And so I mean, the way that it works is you can still do it later. But there's also gonna be a lot of grief because we also YOLO, we only have one life, and or we have more lives, who knows? But anyway, I'm getting up
early in this
current life that we are in that is precious. Also, my cat is scratching in a mirror and it's gonna drive me insane. So I'm gonna go turn that mirror around and
Jordana, talk to us about your
me and self-pleasure.
This could go for 3 hours too.
Actually.
Normally my Sundays do, but yeah.
Well, it was like a very interesting experience growing up for me with self-pleasure. I feel like I was quite exploratory. Like I definitely had sex before I touched myself, but I was lucky to have a really good friend that was very sexual. And I think my 15th or my 16th birthday, she bought me like a glow in the dark like dildo in the shape of a penis, and I was like, what the fuck, this is the best present ever. But sex wasn't that fun for me like before this. Like I remember like having sex and just being like meh. I mean, like I'm doing it and I feel good. Like I feel like someone wants me for like an instant, or like, you know, I think I had a boyfriend at the time and I was like, yeah, like it's nice. But I just wasn't, obviously, like, I didn't know what I was doing. So like, it wasn't feeling like that great. And when I did touch myself, I felt like, remember, not to be like too graphic, but I would lie on my belly and I'm like, this is great. But also would just like never make myself come because I didn't know like how to, and I would just like explore my body. And I often felt quite a lot of shame around this. But the most interesting thing that happened when I was like on this like fresh self pleasure exploration was that my mom found this dildo on my bed one day, and I was dating this guy at the time, and I jump in the car and the dildo's on the car seat, and I'm like, holy fuck balls, no, what is gonna happen? And she actually said to me, like, what do you think your boyfriend thinks about this? Like, I was not allowed to touch myself because, like, you know, my parents knew that I was having sex at this stage of my life. And I just remember thinking, you dumb bitch, he uses it on me. But also, Mom, if you ever watch this, you're actually the best and I love you so much. I fully was like, oh my God, it brought me straight back to this like whole thing of like, my body is not my own.
Yeah.
I am only here to like please other people. And that's how my sex life went after that. Yeah, men particularly, was like, it didn't matter whether I came, it didn't matter like whether I felt good in this, as long as they came, as long as they felt good, as long as, you know. And also the first guy that I had like a proper kind of relationship with was also like deeply conditioned by a purity culture. And after we stopped seeing each other, like rang my parents and apologized and was like, I'm so sorry that I did this to your daughter, and like all of this kind of stuff, which like then kind of like made me feel even more like, oh my gosh, I am the devil's child. I do create this kind of like catastrophic like, I guess, like ruptures in people's lives. And that's like, my parents were always telling me that I was like very selfish and like, you know, not to wear things like that I was wearing, and like all of those different things. But when it comes to like really like understanding my own pleasure and like really being with myself and owning the fuck out of that, that was not until I dated a guy for 7 years and I didn't have one orgasm. And then after we broke up, I went on this journey of like, holy fuck, like I am so obsessed with sex, but sex in my life is so shit all of the time. What is that? Why am I so scared to ask for what I want? Where is this like sexual shame coming from? And it was really this like, this need to be so accepted and chosen, because I'd been so like, I guess like rejected like throughout like high school and like throughout like, you know, I felt like my parents really rejected me because of the like different choices that I made. And like, yeah, I didn't feel like church was my thing. And there was like that rejection kind of like around like not being like a pure child of God and like all of these different things. And I really recognized that I 100% use sex only as a point of validation. And once like I felt so turned on and like the sex would start, but once I kind of had that like initial like penetration, that validation would happen, and then my whole body would shut down because I wasn't choosing myself. Like I wasn't like, holy fuck, like this is how I want to feel. And I was so scared to ask for what I want that my protection mechanism, or like my primal brain and my nervous system, put up such a block that I would be like faking my orgasm over and over again, like almost immediately, to get out of that kind of like deepening of intimacy, because I was so scared to truly give myself what I desired. And I felt like it was wrong for me to be in that deep kind of like pleasure. And recognizing that and like working on that, and like also understanding that like I'm definitely like queer as fuck and prefer to have sex with people with pussies. Like, I felt like that's been a really liberating thing for me. And also like debunking like a lot of like, you know, things about like that are said within the church about homosexuality and stuff like that. But also like feeling, I guess, like that wasn't the biggest thing. I just didn't really want to disappoint my parents again. So like, you know, wanting to be like accepted and chosen by them, like in my queerness, has been like a big journey as well. But really deeply understanding my own pleasure and taking the time and like making the space in my own pleasure practice to make my nervous system feel safe enough for me to actually experience fucking pleasure. I'm like, it is safe. You are allowed to feel pleasure. Like, it's safe for you to feel these things. You're not going to die if you have an orgasm. You're not going to die if like you relax into pleasure. And like the actual like physiology of an orgasm, I really noticed that like inside my body when I'm orgasming, I'm like tensing. Like my whole fucking body will be this like holy fuck, like we are actually gonna die, like, like kind of like tension, and like teaching my body and my pelvis and like, you know, the walls of my vagina to relax during pleasure and like really be able to experience it. That's been the journey of self-pleasure that I've been on, like this reclamation of like, it's safe for you to be gay, it's safe for you to experience pleasure, and understanding what that deeply looks like in my body. And yeah, that's, I guess, has led me to like ritualizing self-pleasure and like having like a more deepening experience, and led me into like the work that I want to do and the work that I do now, you know, like debunking this like internalized like heteronormativity and like purity culture, which creates such a deep like tension inside of the nervous system that does not allow, like, it definitely didn't allow me to fucking relax in pleasure. And yeah,
There's no chill. Yeah.
And
there's no
I'd
chill.
like to add just a couple thoughts I had. I mean, it really is focused on men getting what they, you know, getting what they, not getting what they want. Make sure they don't get what they want. But I mean, I know someone who, like, before her wedding, her dad had a conversation with her about like men needing to come like every couple of days or they get really uncomfortable, and that just completely shut down her relationship.
Right?
With her partner. And I really like, I have a couple clients where that's that same thing, where because like all the Christian kids that were horny, because of course we are, because we're in our, you know, teens and 20s, and you're supposed to be like, what's sex? I want all of it. But like most of them, that penetration is the shutdown point.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to find the line. And so I feel like most of us were like, okay, if the P goes in the V, that's where we're done. And so I disassociated when that would happen. I have a lot of clients, I can't remember the term because I'm vaginitis, anybody, but basically there is a condition where your vagina will just like this.
Yeah, vaginosis.
Vaginosis, thank you.
Sometimes by myself.
Yeah, no, and that same, like that self-pleasure, I've experienced it too, where it's like when the orgasm is coming, like I think of it, I had three, actually, I think this is ironic. So I had 3 C-sections, and I feel like pregnancy and sex and all of it's so intertwined, and I like could never fully contract, release, have these babies out of my body, which I'm like, that's interesting. We had to cut them out, get them out, like have somebody do it for me. But I will feel that, like, because there is that same, like I did a birthing class, and they're like, there's a point, there's transition where shit hits the fan, and then the baby is birthed and the baby comes. And I feel sometimes what it probably would have felt like for me to deliver naturally as I'm pleasuring myself when the orgasm is coming, where it is, the whole body's like, fuck, I'm not supposed to do this. This is not okay. I'm not supposed to feel pleasure. It's not about me. And it is like a surrender and a softening and like a yes, no.
A relaxing. Yeah. It's like your whole body.
Yeah. Yes. You have to. And I mean, I'm sure you do this with your clients. You start to teach people just to relax. The more that you relax, the easier it is for you to feel the pleasure. Totally. But both those things came up in my head when you were talking. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I love that. And it really is like such a thing that you have to teach the body, you know, to relax into pleasure, because we're so built up in this like, like even people that haven't been heavily conditioned with like purity culture or like we're not really taught to relax into the pleasure. So therefore, like our body's capacity to receive the amount of pleasure that we actually can fucking receive is very limited, because, you know, like we have different protection mechanisms, and like sex is one of the most vulnerable aspects of being a human. Like we're connecting, we're opening our heart, like our pericardium's opening, like literally, like our body is literally opening, and like our heart opens, and in that moment, like if sex isn't like the way that you planned it to be, or I guess like the way that you've taught it should be, like your whole body shuts down, and then you feel like those shame things, and you feel like different, like la 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 la. But yeah, fuck, like teaching my body to soften and like literally reprogramming in that it is safe to feel pleasure has been 100% the fucking game changer for me.
I've been working on that too. Actually, after our last talk, Jordana, I was like, am I relaxing during self-pleasure time? Because sometimes I definitely like brace against it.
Yep.
And I think
bracing for impact. It's such a fucking thing. Like
that, and I think too.
I'm glad I'm not the only one. Incoming. Okay.
From which angle? So like I have fun. So but no, it truthfully, like especially with a person, I think this is it. I on my own, I can let myself move around and make the sounds. And yesterday I realized that my window was open, was like, oopsies, you're welcome, construction.
You're welcome.
But and like my neighbor, every time he walks into the room above me. And I'm like, really? Enjoy. But when I'm with a person, I still find myself locking up against the natural, I want to say like the natural flow of orgasm in my body. Because like I don't really look at orgasm and like climax and coming as the same things. Like for me, they're different in terms of what we see, climax, you know, whatever. And like I lock that energy down because I think I truthfully am still shameful of how my body expresses it. And like that's not to say my body's natural expression of it is like any different than the next person. It's just I never learned what that was. I'll also say, because I know a lot of people be like, you know, porn like taints your view of it. I never watched porn. So it wasn't even that I had like an idea of what like the like you know, like the in Plato's talk, like the form of climax is. Like I didn't have anything to go off of. And like especially like Jordana was just saying, like it is so vulnerable. And like in that really vulnerable state, your body like moving involuntarily, you're making these sounds, you're breathing different than normal. And if I'm in my head, oh good Lord, it's not going well. And that's the thing, is that to get like truthfully, like to get the energy like out of my pussy, I go to my head, and then I like literally just now I like clenched my ass because I'm like, nope, we're locking up. And like I can, but it's really hard to relax into it, and it takes time, especially with a new person, to be able to relax into it. Like we were talking about, like I need to know it is safe to take my time to have the experience, all those things.
Yeah.
But not everyone approaches it that way.
Your first experience, you were 15, right? Like that's the time to be learning and to be exploring and to be feeling and to be moving with your intuition. So to have someone be like, you don't know what you're doing. Like, of course she fucking doesn't know what she's doing. She's 15 years old. And you don't always have someone that is able to kind of move with you and to feel the rhythm and to kind of see, oh, what is this? What is this? When I work with couples that are coming out of purity culture, I will be like, hi, you're probably like 14, 15, 16 developmentally sexually. So what would a 14, 15, 16-year-old that wasn't introduced to the purity culture do with their naked partner?
Showerhead?
This button. Yeah, showerhead. What is this button do? But we're taught there's a right or a wrong way to do it. And in the purity culture, we're taught there's a right and a wrong way to do it. It's don't. And then you'll know exactly what to do. As soon as you get married, it's going to be rainbows and butterflies and fireworks and be incredible.
And babies.
And that's, and babies, but that's not how it is. And so you probably have some, therapists and me, it's like, okay. But that kind of thing will stay with you. Like all of us are referencing these points. We can remember these moments that we were like, oh, this is what I need to know. And especially when you're a teenager and it's really like survival to fit in, like, of course your body is like, I don't know what I'm doing. Cause like I focus a lot on complex PTSD. And like, it really was like for your little 15-year-old body, like a life or death. Like I need to know
Totally.
where I'm socially rejected and I'm not okay. So you come into those moments and your body's like, I don't know if I'm 15 or if I'm 20, 29.
I'm 29. Yeah, almost.
So it takes, and it's exactly what Jordana was talking about. You have to start to let the nervous system know, actually, it's safe. This is normal. I actually do know what I'm doing. This is one of the basic things that humans know how to do. We just got to give ourselves the space to figure it out, which I feel like kind of works with question number 3, right? How is your relationship with your body divinely guided? I'm sorry, it's my turn. I'm gonna mute. I want to also give Beaux space because we're just like, I want to give Beaux space to like commentary. I'm getting water because I need to hydrate, but I'm like right here so I can still hear y'all. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I like, my heart is like, I don't know. It's really interesting because I do think it's a different experience for cis men and as compared to women. You know, I'm 30 years old. I've been married before. I've been in lots of relationships with people of different religions. And it's still interesting to hear like this conversation about like locking up and feeling like scared to, or maybe not scared, feeling shame to release. It's pretty, it's shocking to hear. I don't know, it makes me feel bad. Obviously the patriarchy is really shitty. And I resonate a lot with the idea that there was a lot of pressure for me when I got married, that like all of a sudden, you know, like your pleasure was not your own. Now you're going to be, and I'm like in the wedding ceremony, like saying my vows, and I'm like, is it going to happen now? Like I expected this magical, like just transformation. And then we would just have a perfect sex life, right? Like
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. This is like what God promised me. I felt pretty betrayed by God in some ways, you know, that it was like, this is bullshit. Like I kept up a lot of my end of the deal. Now I'm not perfect, but you know, and so, you know, and I know like my ex-wife certainly felt a lot like similar, where it was really tough for her to, you know, it wasn't perfect and magical immediately, because there was no exploration or real journey with yourself from that early age when we should have been. And then we would have been better partners for each other, probably. I mean, should have been. You said don't say that or whatever. I don't know. Yeah, exactly. Like, so that's kind of like what I was thinking while you were talking. I thought all of that was incredibly interesting to learn.
Yeah. And I feel like just like listening to you, Beaux, like when you have this direct idea of what sex is supposed to be like, and when it's not like that, it's like the shame around that also, like it's like a byproduct of like the sexual act, like, and it stops you in your tracks of like, holy fuck, like am I doing something wrong? Like why isn't this the way that it was like supposed to be? Or like, you know, I was told that it was going to be this like holy shit glorious moment, and it's like these two bodies bumping uglies not knowing what to do. And then, you know, when sex isn't the way that we have been taught that it's supposed to be, that also creates this like deep internal shutdown of like, I'm wrong, there's something like wrong with this relationship, or like, you know, different shame aspects definitely come into view. I've got to mute like every now and again, just because there's going to be background noise.
Or like overtime, but like not on a schedule. want to check in where everyone's at. I feel like and I don't want to like cut off the natural flow of conversation. I feel like we've kind of touched on most of the talking points just as it goes.
Yes.
Does anyone have like, I was going to ask one final kind of question for anyone who wants to share, but does anyone have a lingering point right now that they're like, I want to really share this thing?
I have something really interesting. When Jess was talking earlier about focus on the family, and that's what she heard, this is from this book that I got. It's Sexual Detox for Young Men. And this is crazy. This is the book that I got. And in here, he talks about Dr. James Dotson, Focus on the Family. And he says that to be honest, Dobson's statement here is very humanistic. He sees that masturbation is common. He sees that it's natural, but the response to it is guilt and shame. So he concludes that the guilt and shame must be unfounded. Then he goes on to say that Focus on the Family and Dr. Dobson is unfounded in their scripture. And I just reread this book to prepare for this, because I was going back. And it's so interesting, like that was what you heard, and this guy saying like, even hearing like it's not supposed to be common, it's like complete shame. And I was like, what in the world is this book that I'm reading?
I feel like I'm gonna have to reference those. Could you maybe send in our group chat the links to the books or something so I can post them when I post a video? Cool.
Yes. I cannot recommend if any of my clients were to watch this, or any of my fellow therapist friends, they'd think, of course you're doing this. This book changed my life.
Any links you want, I'll throw them in. Because I think there's like, they're awesome resources. So
this could fuck up your shit. So
fair. My lingering kind of question that's like a combination of a couple of them, I guess, would just be if anyone wants to share what engaging in their self-pleasure looks like now, or even like practical tools you use, like etc. Because it's big. Like we've talked a lot about the shifts, I think, and like what our relationship looks like now. And I've alluded to my 3-hour Sunday afternoons, but like, is there anything else that anyone feels like sharing about their relationship with self-pleasure currently?
Yeah, I will. I think like the biggest thing that I'll share here is like having a relationship with my pussy has definitely changed like the way that I self-pleasure, and like creating boundaries for my body, like understanding my own boundaries has really let me trust myself more, which has created a deeper like net of safety. And like not touching myself, like if I'm getting like a no from them, or like a yes or a maybe, and really like understanding like how to honor that, as well as like non-goal orientated self-pleasure. So not just like making it about like coming or like having an orgasm or anything like that, but really like deeply giving myself the space to find the erogenous zones that are literally all over my body, and like honoring my body as if like I'm the best thing that I'm gonna ever fuck in this lifetime, and just having that kind of like deep relationship with my own pussy and my own genitals and like all aspects of my body has really enabled me to like expand my pleasure, so that it's not just like so genital focused. And like even though the clitoris has like 8,000 nerve endings and its literal only job in this lifetime is to give a pussy owner pleasure, expanding pleasure like beyond genitals is something that like has been a massive journey for me. Because like the brain obviously creates like neural pathways, and like you are really taught like where you really teach yourself like certain ways that you come. So like exploring those and like deepening those like definitely takes time. And personifying pussy and like really understanding like her individual language and like the divine guidance that she brings into my life has expanded my pleasure, not only beyond like my genitals or my body, but into like different areas of my life. Like, you know, pleasure is like a money making activity, and pleasure, like, you know, builds relationships, platonic or romantic. And like, we get to feel pleasure even while we're driving, or while we're brushing our teeth, or while we're showering, and all of those different things. And I guess like the most practical tool that I have is taking it slow. Like, definitely, like, the nervous system is a complex part of our existence, and a lot of different things will come up, like past stories, like what we've been discussing on this panel, like, you know, the different like sensations of like shame, or different like past experiences, like, yeah, PTSD, that really like stop you in your way from experiencing pleasure. But if you can sit with those sensations for even just a moment, and like give them the space, then you don't actually have to be stopped in your tracks. It's just that moment of like recognizing that you're feeling a sensation, and continuing to like bring pleasure into it will allow like the body to open up more, and the pleasure capacity to expand even more. And like really getting to know your genitals, like personifying them, like understanding what their yes and their no and their maybe is, so that you can fully respect their boundaries. Because the more that you can respect your body's boundaries, or your genitals boundaries, the more that they're respected with somebody else, and the more that you can deepen that intimacy and deepen that sex, because you feel this safety that I trust my own boundaries, I'm going to definitely fucking respect them, and everybody that comes in is going to be like a mirror of that boundary and that respect. Oh god, I could really fucking tangent about it all day, but I'll just fucking stop with that. But that has definitely like changed my whole self-pleasure practice, like personifying and like having that deepened relationship. I guess like a few books that I've read, like The Body Keeps the Score,
Yes.
Pussy, a Reclamation, both of those books definitely like changed my relationship to understanding my own trauma and how it shows up in my sexuality. Oh, thank you. Yes. And yeah, like Pussy, a Reclamation is a really good book to start with when you want to really like create that deep relationship with your genitals, and with with bringing a deeper pleasure into every aspect of your life.
I'm going to piggyback off that, because that's
Great.
exactly, I just like, pleasure is pleasure. And I mean, I think we were taught that it's different. Like, you know, there's so much dualism in Christianity. There's sacred, there's secular, there's good, there's bad. But just in general, pleasure is good, and it's okay to receive it. Specifically for female identifying individuals, there just is a cultural expectation for a lot of us that we put everyone's needs before ours. And so it's so important to start to say yes to yourself first. I mean, it helps when you know your own pussy and you know your own pleasure, and you say yes to it in whatever way and whatever is being asked of it, of whatever you're asking for. To say yes to that allows you to say yes to your partner if you do have partnered sex, because you're like, if I'm allowed to have what I want because it feels good. But also, I mean, like, the sun on your face is pleasure. Laying in bed and watching your favorite show is pleasure. Just hugging your best friend is pleasure. And when you can like, there's a book called Slow Sex. Do I have it behind me? This is my little like office space. I'll have to get it for you. But there's a book called Slow Sex that really just talks about exactly slowing it down and letting yourself feel what feels good. Because the more that you do that, the more that all of the things feel good, because your brain's like, oh, wait, like I'm supposed to pay attention to what feels good. And along the same lines of just, I mean, I can't say yes enough to slowing down, like straight from this, because it's even if you don't, well, okay, I think everyone after COVID has complex PTSD at this point, some version of it, because it's what happens when you are trapped in a situation where you feel like it's a life or death situation every day, and you just keep going into these different stress responses. There's fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, and fawn is like everyone else's needs before mine. So when you keep living in a situation where you're going into those every day, your brain will start to just go into them immediately and very easily, and it's hard to get back out of them. And when you slow down, you tell your body, hey, hey buddy, hey body buddy, there's no lion chasing you. There's nothing bad happening here. If something bad was happening, we'd be moving fast, but we're moving slow, and that calms your nervous system. So I'm saying exactly what you just said, just a little bit differently. And just like in God created all of us and said, it is good, like male and female, he created them, which I'm always like, so God created trans people, obviously. But God created you exactly as you are. And maybe we're actually able to self-regulate, and we actually know exactly what we're doing, and we don't have to say we should or shouldn't do stuff. We can just say the things that our body is asking for. So,
Yeah. Oh God.
Are we
I-
did we just become best friends?
Like 100%. I'm like, oh my God, can we do like some kind of like epic deliciousness together? I like slowing down is the number one thing that I teach my clients. 100%. Like,
Yeah.
Me being
getting that getting that parasympathetic nervous system like online is like everything. And 100%, like every single person that is on earth right now has trauma, like, and it just like shows up in different ways for different people, like la 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 la. But that whole thing of slowing down, that creates the bridge from, you know, what I was talking about, like when you get like penetrated and you like have that kind of response and then you stop. It's like if I slowed down in that moment, I would have been able to recognize that this is just a sensation that I'm experiencing, and beyond that is a little bit more pleasure if I let myself relax into it, if my parasympathetic nervous system comes online and I'm able to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Like, oh, that's interesting. What does that feel like?
I'm like
thinking of all the
things I have to go try. But I think it was just interesting, Jess, that you said that, because I think just before this call I had messaged you and like Jordana being like, I think everyone right now is in that survival mode, and I don't know what it is, like collectively.
We're surviving global pandemic. I mean,
well, that, but like this week in particular, like something is up, and that's why I keep doing like this, and I like instinctively
me too.
because I have PMJ, but
yeah, I've been doing this too.
so like chill, because it's a lot.
It's really good to like activate the vagus nerve.
Oh, well, there you go.
Like just down here.
Again. But before I ramble, Beau, do you feel like segueing in with anything there?
Yes, sure. You know, when Jordana and Jess are talking about like slowing down, and it reminds me of what, you know, I consider like mindfulness, and taking inventory of your body is like my favorite thing when I am mindful. And I start by thinking, is anything hurting? And then I go, oh, wow, that shoulder. Why is it like, why am I carrying it like this? And you don't notice those things. I think that, you know, pleasure can be so many things. And like sexual pleasure is like obviously a really important one. It's a really important part of the experience. And I think in the same way that you need to be mindful of your body, you try to do the same thing. You know, where I'm hearing a lot from y'all, like, almost like trauma responses around like achieving like climax, and that's scary. But I think that for me, you know, my trauma was more about like attraction, you know, that was more where it was. And so, you know, letting go of the shame of being attracted to people, for me looked like deconstructing the ideas and reclaiming them, keeping the cool ones. You know, one important thing that one of the biggest books in purity culture was Why I Kissed Dating Goodbye by Joshua Harris. And what he talks about in the book was that there's no lines, you know, like he said, I make out with my girlfriend, but then, I go to church, you know, it's like these nice lines that you could have to make yourself feel good. But he said, no, instead, purity is about looking at God, and then you just follow God, and then whatever happens along that journey is good for you. And I'm like, Yes, I use that to this day. Like
Yeah.
my idea of God being an old white guy in the sky with a beard who really cares if I masturbate. No, that's not my idea of God anymore. My idea of God has developed in ways that helps me live a better life and find pleasure in myself and the people that I have partnerships with romantically and sexually. And so I just think that like reclaiming it can be a really powerful thing to like take it away and say, yeah, I'm going to keep that idea, but that's not God to me. And I'm not going to worship that. I'm not going to give my power to that shame. So that's what a couple of things that I've tried to do to change my story with self-pleasure. And yes, I think that's the last thought there.
Good. Joshua Harris has since been on like an apology tour for that book.
Yeah. And like, I think him and everybody that read his book got divorced. So it was like,
I read his book and I'm divorced. So
yeah, it's like, whoops. Yeah. And I respect it. He's doing a lot of good work right now, I think.
Yeah, because the truth is there's always a chance for rebirth and reconstruction and renewal.
Yeah.
That's what's actually true.
I love that. Actually, this is a total tangent, but I have a bat tattooed on my arm, which is a memorial tattoo for the person who told me to go buy my first vibrator. She chose to leave the physical world 5 years ago, and I went to the park the other night because I'm weird and I like to go for walks when it's just about dark to like tempt fate or something. It's like in the practical sense of like being a woman walking alone at night, I shouldn't do it. But then the witch in me is like, this darkness is comfort, and like off I go. So anyway, and there were bats. I've never seen them like for real, and they were just like flying over my head, and it was so beautiful. But the reason that was brought up is because they stand for like journeying, rebirth, and communication. And I feel like that is such a symbol of everything we are talking about right now. And it's really beautiful. And I think that that's it, is like reframing what pleasure is, because I think it's even like turn on is not just for the bedroom. Like I am here to get turned on by everything in this fucking world. And it's an amazing place to be when I can let myself live in that. And I think currently I'm learning gradually with a whole lot of support to like also find turn on the things that are really uncomfortable. And like like I think people have read that book, Existential Kink. Some people have, and like going down that road, and like
I wish I had it.
I have it beside me. It's just they're all on the other side of the shelf. And there was like this meme I saw, was it today or yesterday? Like, oh yeah, it's like me doing shadow work and the person's like choking their shadow up against the wall. And I was like, is that existential kink? Because like, okay. But it's like, where can I like fucking that shame wide open? Like that's what's been coming up for me lately. And I don't quite know what that looks like for me yet, but thinking about that. And I guess in terms of a practice, like so the first time truthfully, it goes back to when I first bought my vibrator, which I definitely burned out since I bought it. That was too much clitoral stimulation, let me tell you. I've gone to other methods now, but anyway, it was part of self-care. So I actually have another video on the channel talking about like intentional self-care versus just like care of self. Like care of self is like, which can be a lot of fucking work, but like brush your teeth, have a shower, eat some food. Self-care is like intentional and like beyond the baseline. And I guess you could argue that like orgasms ought to be a necessary part of the baseline existence. Fact. But for purposes of this conversation, I'll differentiate. And so self-care being like intentional and extra. So self-care is not me like sitting down on the couch at night to watch TV after a long day, because that's just like my default.
That's so what was survival self-care?
Well, exactly. It's like, it's complacency really. For me. So what was suggested was to actually schedule in an hour a week of something intentional. And so when I first bought that vibrator, and I shared this in the group the other day, I scheduled an hour in my calendar where I was going to learn how to use it. And I had that book, and I like went into my room and like turned down the lights and like turned on the doors, because like that's my jam, and just like explored.
I love it.
But the big thing too, like Jordana said, was like there wasn't an end goal because also I didn't really know what that looked like. I was literally just exploring and showing up for my body. And as I flipped each page and like tried it, you know, it was like, oh, we're doing a figure 8 now. Okay. I just felt into like, do I like this? Do I not? Like, what is my consent level with myself? And now with my like usually weekend practices, because there can be like the quickie to like get myself to bed at night, but like that's different. I want to like meet myself where I'm at and like be able to like take it slow. Like I said, like multiple hours. I will stop to like text people because I like need a breather and then I'll like go back to it. And like I set that time aside for me and I get to follow what comes up. And so I think the other thing with that is like look to practices that already feel safe and incorporate them, right? Like today I actually did a love meditation that Jordana sent me. And it ended with like self-massage. And then I let that segue into just feeling like, where does my body want to be touched and how does she want to be touched? And like, what are we using? And like, I really like wax play. So like had some fun with that. And then like, I found out that, okay, game changer. I have a Lovense vibrator because of long distance things. And I have Spotify Premium. Hello. So I synced my vibrator with a like safety security playlist and like just focused on that and was like, yes. So like things like that and like incorporate things you might not normally, because that can be part of the really fun exploration, I think.
Yeah, it's creativity.
Yeah. Anyway, I think that's where I leave off. Jordana, you want to jump in there?
No, I think I've said enough today.
Okay. I loved everything that everyone has said. Jess, are you?
I have a thought of a way that we could close it if you want to.
Oh yeah, wait, I had one more suggestion to people.
Oh yes, please. Also, I'm not in charge.
No,
I might be kind of bragging.
I'm not. I'm just here.
I love it.
I feel this needs to be a disclaimer where we're talking about pleasure and like physical touch with body. And I think this goes for anyone. Yeah. Lube is for your pleasure. That's all I'm going to say.
No, yes.
Right?
Yes.
It is not.
Yeah.
It's not a thing you need because of something else, or like it is for your pleasure. If it brings you pleasure, fucking do it. That is all. I have a lot of people coming to me asking those questions. Like, oh, what if it's like, no, just use the lube. Just use it.
Just do it.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. How would you find what works for you? Like, yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. How would you close?
Okay. So I think the last question was, how would you define purity now? But I wonder if everybody could do one word of what purity means to them now.
That sounds
or longer, but I like a challenge. So
I like one word. I like one word. Oh, I'll just go with first thought, best thought, which is also an exercise I learned in orgasmic meditation. Freedom.
Mm-hmm. I'll say mine so no one steals it. Wholeness.
Rebirth.
Mm-hmm.
Magical gateway. I know it's true.
It's hyphenated. It's fine. I'll give it to you. Beautiful. Oh, you are all so amazing. Like, thank you seriously so much for all of this. This has been so much fun. And Jess, like, awesome talking to you for like the very first time. Like, you and I talked for the first time like 2 weeks ago. Jordana, we go way back now. Like, she knows way too much about my life. And just all of Facebook, but just like, yeah, thank you.
It was so beautiful to meet you, Babe Towns, and just to have this luscious conversation. Yeah, let's all connect.
Yes, sounds like a plan.